Hello class, my name is Moses Valencia, and this PowerPoint is going to go over the program we implemented in Lane County to prevent veteran suicide. The purpose for this program was to reduce the rate of veteran suicide in Lane County, Oregon, as Lane County has one of the higher veteran suicide rates in the state of Oregon. As for Oregon itself goes, Oregon ranks within the top 5 in the country of veteran suicides rates. So this is a problem that we felt adamant about, and then we wanted to do something to see if we can change it. The program intervention objectives were to increase the VA participation of the healthcare here in Lane County, as well as increase the involvement and awareness of veteran suicide amongst family members and community members. As you can see from the little pie chart below, VA suicide rates greatly decrease with VA utilizations. The needs assessment for this program was conducted at the VA Healthcare Center here in Eugene, as well as the VFW Outpost, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the homeless shelter here in Eugene. The data was collected by way of a questionnaire with open-ended interview questions and closed-ended questions. And a great strength of this was that the administrators of this survey were all disabled veterans, and that helped us relate to the participants and gain their trust a bit easier. The goal of this needs assessment was to verify some of the data we received from secondary data sources to determine whether these are correct and they apply here in Lane County, such as VA utilization rate and veteran suicide, community involvement and awareness, and determining other contributors that increase the rate of suicide, such as sex, age, race, etc., etc. Some of the major needs assessment findings that we found by way of primary data collection were 85% of male combat veterans are between ages 20 and 41, which makes sense that they were of age to join the military right as 9/11 era wars happened. 53% were not very knowledgeable of VA healthcare benefits. 90% of these veterans noted that their families weren't very knowledgeable of veterans' benefits of suicide prevention. 60% of veterans believe that their family members are not knowledgeable about veteran suicide or prevention resources. And these veterans, 50% of them go to these people that are unknowledgeable about veteran suicide in times of crisis. So as we can see that we need to bridge the gap between education and resources for these family members and community members. The first major finding via secondary data was this chart from the VA that illustrates the ages of suicide in veterans between 2005 and 2016. As you can see, the dark blue solid line are veterans between the ages 18 and 34. So in 2015, 50 veterans per 1,000 population took their lives between the ages 18 and 34. This makes sense because these veterans were at age to join the military in the war era of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom. The next major finding via secondary data was this chart that I found at the VA, and it illustrates the increased risk of suicide in veterans that do not use VA healthcare. As you can see, it is tremendously higher for veterans that do not use VA healthcare than those that do. Some of the other findings we found were, according to the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, there are 303,000 veterans living in Oregon, and only 143,000 are enrolled in VA healthcare, as well as only 53% of combat veterans are in receive mental health assistance and VA services. So out of the major findings that we found via primary and secondary data, we kind of wanted to incorporate these issues into our planning and our training. So we wanted to increase healthcare education between veterans and their family members and apply it. So we decided to incorporate VA training into our class, and we wanted family to be there so they too can learn how to support and learn suicide prevention techniques via the SAFE training and the other trainings that we're doing that are based off of veterans' culture, so they gain a better understanding of why veterans take their lives and why things happen the way they do in the veterans community. Some of the planning objectives of our plan or of our program were to educate veterans of the accessibility of the VA. Many veterans don't understand how accessible it really is. They have telehealth programs. They have web programs where you don't even have to leave your house. They have ride sharing. They have so many things that veterans are unaware of, and they need to know these things so they can take advantage of them and make it easier for them to receive health care. Another thing was one of the objectives was to educate the community and family about veteran suicide. As we can see through primary data collection, that many community members and family members don't really understand the signs of suicide in veterans. So the SAFE training will do a lot to help them understand that. Another one would be conduct class in a veterans organization building. So that was one of our objectives, because we wanted our veterans to feel safe and in an environment where they're used to amongst their own. So we were able to get the VA and the VFW to loan us some class space. And another objective was to have veterans on hand to answer questions. So myself and 4 or 5 other gentlemen came in and guided the veterans that were unsure and had questions and gave them feedback. Another objective was that I wanted to make the goals of the class measurable. So we conducted the training, and then we conducted tests, and then we compared the introduction test to the final test, and we wanted to see if the program was actually beneficial or not. So those are the planning objectives. As for the strategies that we used, we incorporated VA benefits training programs, so both the family members and the veterans could understand what they had available to them. We used a SAFE program, the Veteran Suicide Prevention Program, to educate the participants on veteran suicide prevention. We used veterans culture training to educate the participants on veterans culture and things that they need to understand so they can relate to these veterans and understand what they're going through. We requested training rooms from the VFW and the VA, and that was accomplished. We used DAV, Department of American Veterans vans. They allowed us to use their vans to transport veterans that did not have transportation to the class. We created exams to record the measurements. We administered one introduction exam and then one final exam, so we were able to compare the both. And we set aside time to apply learning strategies from the courses so they can get hands-on training they would understand how to use the strategies that they learned. The implementation role, or the happenings of what happened during the day. So before class, we checked out drivers and vehicles from the Department of American Veterans. We provided transportation for these veterans to get to the classes. And once we got there, we set the class up, and we conducted our training, as you can see through the schedule. And after the class, we cleaned up the classroom, transported veterans back to their residence, and turned in the vehicles. It all went pretty smoothly. We probably could have put more breaks in, though. Some of the strengths of the implementation of the program were we gained the trust of the veterans, as we're veterans too, and we understand the things that they're going through for the most part. We were able to make their family members more comfortable, as we also had family members attending. And there was many people there with experience in the veteran suicide and education department to help us give the veterans very good feedback and help them progress through the program. Some of the challenges we experienced in implementing this was trying to stay on task. You get a lot of veterans in one room. They tend to tell war stories and gripes and about the VA and things like that. So staying on task was a very difficult thing, which caused us to get off schedule a bit. So then we had to rush through some things. And another thing was the technology that we used. A lot of the veterans didn't understand, so we had to constantly be assisting them in the training so they could get through it. Some of the program outcome challenges were recruiting participants for the survey. Veterans tend to not want to get involved in a lot of personal things, revealing their personal information and how they feel. So that was a great challenge that we had to overcome. Another one is recruiting younger veterans. Some of the older veterans would, they jump at the chance to speak and talk and get involved. Some of the younger guys kind of just want to be left alone, so that was another challenge that we had to overcome. Waiting on the VA to approve our surveys, so everything in the government takes 10 times as long as it should take, but we got through that. Waiting on DAV to approve our vehicle loans, so that was quite a challenge, as we had to talk to a lot of higher ups and get the okays and make sure that we weren't taking advantage of their generosity. And creating measurable training, so that was really tough because we wanted to actually know that this training was working instead of just relying on what other people, other reviewers say about the training. Some of the outcome strengths were organization that we had throughout the time. I mean, there was a couple guys in charge of different things, so they were on top of their game and organized, and we all communicated with the contributors greatly. We talked to them every single day, and that also made them realize that we were serious about this. And that is the program presentation of what we did here in Eugene. Thank you for listening.